former defensive back at the University of Alabama. Will, I hope you're doing well, man. Welcome into the game.
What's going on, man? Glad to be back.
Absolutely. What was your takeaways from Kent State, Alabama?
I thought it was exactly what we needed. It was a good tune-up game. Exactly why you schedule them. Get an opportunity to kind of get back to basics. Get some guys healthy during the week. Get them some good game reps early, then rest some of the starters. See what else you got behind those guys and some depth on the bench. And kind of go through some plays. It was exactly what we needed right now. Got some things tuned up a little bit, and we need it. We got a good little home stretch run here. Starting with Kentucky, but certainly after that, it's going to get pretty tough on us.
Oh, I totally agree. And I want to work our way to the SEC here in just a couple of minutes. But Nick Saban also announced today that the suspension is over for Tony Brown. He's going to be back for the Crimson Tide. This is going to provide some much-needed depth. A very physical defensive back in Tony Brown.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how he integrates back into the secondary. We've had a bunch of guys that have filled in and done a good job. They've done a good job thus far. I mean, we've played some good teams with some good receivers. So I think some guys have kind of earned their spot. So there's no doubt. I mean, Saban's going to make him earn his way back in. I don't know the full extent of the dynamic, for his suspension and how Coach is kind of approaching him. But he'll definitely have to earn it back, and it won't be easy for him. But like you say, I mean, depth is always good. We're always going to have guys get banged up or getting injured, and the more guys we have able to step up and play, is certainly a good thing. And he's a guy that's shown he has the ability to do that. So it's a huge plus for us, and hopefully he can just jump right back into the swing of things.
We're talking to Will Lowery right now, former defensive back at the University of Alabama. Will, I want to go to Joshua Jacobs, the freshman tailback who went, Damian went down with an injury, the sophomore there as far as an ankle injury. Don't know the severity of that. Nick Saban saying that he's day-to-day along with Ardarius Stewart and Robert Foster. But the freshman tailback came in and showed you that he could be a solid back, I think, in this league.
Yeah, I got to give myself a little credit there, Ryan. I kind of called that last week. I thought he looked really good. In the win against Ole Miss. He's shown some ability in the opportunities that he's had this year. I think he's a really well-rounded back. He steps up into the hole and can block. He can pass block. He can run the ball. He can catch it. He can do it all. And so it's pretty exciting, especially, we haven't really had anybody. Damon Harris, I guess, was the established number one back at this point until he got injured. But I still think that we were looking for a little something more. He looks like he might have what we're looking for. I mean, he's got all the tools, and with the injuries and the success that he's had thus far, I think we'll see him get more opportunities as the year goes. And it'll be exciting to see how he develops. He kind of reminds me of Trent in a way, the way he moves on the field. Tough, low to the ground, runs hard. So it's definitely a great thing for us to have a guy that young starting to develop so quickly in the year.
Will, I go to Les Miles here for a couple of minutes, somebody that you've had a chance to compete against as a player and go up against some of his teams. But, I understand why they did it, but sometimes I look at teams, they want to be Alabama. They compare themselves to what Alabama, and we're watching something that may never be done in college football again. 4 out of the last 7. Nick Saban is on an amazing run, but I think Nick Saban, they call it the Saban effect. And Saban was even asked about that today at the press conference as far as, and he really didn't have a comment. He sort of gave you a response. But LSU firing Les Miles, what were your thoughts?
I can't say that I'm surprised. Obviously, with all the stories last year of them being on the ropes, it can't come as a shock to anybody, really. I hate the way that it happened to him. I mean, at the ending of that game was so crazy. And they were, they're a review away from winning that ball game. And obviously, they're not, chances are 99 times out of 100, he's not going to get fired after a win like that on the road in the SEC. So to lose on a review is just tough to me. But, in general, I can't say that I'm surprised. He's the reasons that he's fired, you can't argue with. I mean, he has struggled to adapt. He's struggled to get an offensive rhythm going at all, really, in the last few years. And, I think it's interesting because as you compare him to Saban, I mean, if there's a knock on Coach Saban, I think it would be that, we haven't been so diverse or mixed it up, really grown with the times, I guess, on offense, which, haven't needed to, obviously, with the power running game that we've had the last few years, the offensive front that we've had and the backs that we've had. You can't argue with the power run game attack. But we certainly weren't changing with the times, developing this new age offense, the RPO, the quick, a lot of the motion, the pre-snap stuff, everything that we're actually seeing now that Lane is here and we have started to adjust some. You didn't see any of that with LSU. They had some highly recruited quarterbacks that had come in, some guys with some ability. They had Cam Cameron there who was supposed to be able to, develop them, and it just never really happened for them. They kind of got stuck. They were in a stalemate on offense. They weren't able to progress, and ultimately it was their downfall. And you can't fault them. I mean, they've had success, but it's kind of like the Mark Richt thing. Just being consistent every year isn't good enough anymore, whether that's right or wrong. It's not going to keep you a job. You have to win. You have to consistently beat the top level teams. You can't be satisfied with 10 wins at a program like LSU or at Georgia. You have to be competing for the national title and for the SEC championship every year. And with them kind of having a down few years and certainly with them not being able to beat us in the last few years, I forget how many times in a row it is now that we have beaten them. But I can't say that I'm surprised, but at the same time, he's a phenomenal coach. His players loved him. The fan base loved him for the most part up until the end here when they weren't getting over the hump. But I don't think there's any doubt he won't have any trouble finding a new job. He'll probably have a pick of what he wants to do. If he wants to wait out for a really good head coaching opportunity, I'm sure there'll be a few available at the end of this year. If I was him, I'd go kick my feet up on the beach and collect that payout check for a while, like Kevin Steele did when he got fired from Clemson. Take a breather, take a step back, maybe reassess kind of where the game is at, look at it with an objective eye, and then reassess your options down the road in a year or so. But we'll see what he does. He's a great coach again, so hate to see it happen to him. He's a great competitor, and we'll see what happens.
We're talking to Will Lowery right now, and let's go around the league a couple of minutes. I want to start in Ole Miss against a former coach that you know a lot about there as far as Kirby Smart at Georgia. It was a wake-up call there for Ole Miss. It was a great bounce back after losing a heartbreaker to the University of Alabama in Oxford and the comeback victory there by the Crimson Tide. But they seemed to wake up early on Saturday morning and a great performance against Georgia.
Yeah, typically you don't see teams play that well coming out of the week they play us. Not that that's giving us any credit. It's just a trend that's developed over recent years. I think it's just the effect of a long physical game in the trenches for the most part. But they didn't have that at all. They had no hangover from the game. They played really well. And, Ole Miss is a great team. Let's not forget that they've played a really, really tough schedule to open the year. So just because they don't have an undefeated record doesn't mean that they're a phenomenal elite football team right now. And they showed that this weekend. I mean, I think Georgia's kind of skated by at this point. They've beaten some lesser opponents. They've kind of played down to their competition a little bit. And like you said, they got exposed this weekend. And I can't say that I'm surprised by that. I mean, I think Coach Smart's a great coach. But as we've talked about before, being a great coach does not guarantee success. Certainly not in your first year. It takes time to build up a program in all facets of how things are set up, especially in a place like Georgia. It just so much more goes into it than people realize of just X's and O's and the football games on Saturday. Between the support staff, the training staff, the academic folks, the recruiting that you have to do. There's just a lot of different things that contribute to the success of a program. So certainly a wake-up call for those guys and for that program. I don't think that it has any bearing on the long-term, success that Coach Smart may or may not have at Georgia. I think he's got all the ability to be a great coach and to take their program to where they want it to be, but he just needs some time. So, that one stings. But we had a few losses of our own there in 2007 in Coach Saban's first year that made you think once or twice and kind of, shocked you a little bit. I mean, Louisiana Monroe is not an expected loss every year, but, it happens. I mean, it's on the road in the SEC. Sometimes those things happen. So it was pretty rough to watch there early on. I'm glad they were able to score a few points there in the second half and make it less bad, I guess you could say. But credit to Ole Miss. I mean, they're a great team. It'll be interesting to see how they finish the year out and how much more volatility we can expect to see in the SEC West and the East as well.
Hey, let me go to Texas A&M and Arkansas. A great nightcap, and it was a great game that went on into the evening. But Texas A&M, are they for real?
I'm still not buying A&M. I know I'm on the short end of the spectrum there. No, they're a good team. I think Trevor Knight's a great athlete, but I'm not buying into them yet. Arkansas had every chance to win that game. They had the ball on the goal line. I don't know how many snaps. They couldn't get any points out. They won a good game at home. I'm still not buying the hype on them. I think Arkansas is still a really good team. They just had some breaks go against them. They weren't able to make the play to get over the hump, but it's still going to be a tremendously difficult game for Alabama when we go to Arkansas and additionally when we play A&M. I mean, they're two good teams, but we'll see on A&M. Their defense still just is not selling it for me. I mean, they got some talent on offense. They always have. But it was a great game, like you say. I mean, it's been a great start to the season. There have been some really good games, a lot of fun to watch, and just another example of how tough the SEC is. Just because not every team in the league is winning as many games as some of the other. People are saying the SEC's down or it's not as elite as it is. It's just the week in, the week out grind that makes the SEC so difficult, and it's those kind of games, the A&M Arkansas. That are, evidence of that. I mean, I just don't see guys like Christian McCaffrey coming to the SEC and having the success that he does, putting up the stats that he does, if he's playing against these kind of athletes on defense week in and week out in special teams. I mean, it's just a really tough league, and, that was another great example of it. It'll be fun to watch how both of those teams go from here, from that game. It could be a turning point either direction for both of them. So, we'll see how they respond in the coming weeks.
Will, is there any downside to playing two opponents? And there's no way that you can do anything about the SEC, but it's just your rotation through Kentucky. But this is not a great Kentucky team by no means. Alabama's about a 34.5-point difference. You play Kent State, not a great team. But is there any chance that you think this is beneficial, playing two teams like this in back-to-back weeks? Because you sort of iron sharpens iron when you go up against these great teams. Is this beneficial for Alabama to get Kent State, Kentucky, and then have to sort of crank it back up for Arkansas and Tennessee on the road, or do you think this is a good thing?
I think it is. I mean, if you take a team like a 2009, for example, maybe not, because we were so we had a really veteran team. A lot of our guys were seniors. They had been playing for a few years. We were coming off a year we were really good. We didn't lose, relatively a whole lot of folks. I think we were ready for elite competition right out of the gate a year like that. Now, this year's team, I think that, we still have a lot to work on. We've got some young guys. We've still got, kind of a relatively newer system on offense with Kiffin still continuing to develop and tinker and tweak the offensive play calling and personnel with the new weapons that we have. I think that it's a good thing for us because, you got a Kent State. It's Kent State. No one really respects them. No offense to their program, obviously. But when you come to Alabama, my wife was asking me, what do they think when they come to play Alabama? Do they expect to win? Surely not. It's kind of just it's a given. It's a tune-up game. Now, Kentucky being in the SEC, yeah, we're 35-point favorites, but it's the SEC like we were just talking about. I don't think that we'll have any trouble with them, but I don't think anybody did when we went to play them in 2009 either and beat them by a field goal. So it's going to be a difficult game. Rest assured, the coaches will not be letting them take a second to breathe or act like it's a gimme game. It could very easily turn into a war because of the athletes they have. And, Coach Stoops is a great coach. So, them being not as good as they are is good for us to kind of continue to work and have an opportunity to play our game and, play within ourselves and not have to stretch, do things like a surprise onside like we did in the national championship. We can play our game, try and stick to our game, our X's and O's, and try and improve before we go on the road against really elite competition. So I think it helps. It's a step up from last week. It's another opportunity to improve and get better before we really get into the thick of it in a couple of weeks.